Welcome one and all to the Mudai Manga Book Club podcast. Today is February 29th, 2025. This is episode 5, special delivery, one giant wolf with a sui on the side. My name is Louis and I'm joined with my co-host.
As a wise man once said, "Omae no ketsu o tataite, kami ga miteiru nara, seishou o kakusu."
Tom.
Well, hey there, everybody. How's you doing?
For anyone who hasn't listened before, we typically have 3 main topics we're going to discuss every week. The first one is going to be what we've been talking about, what we've been reading, what we've been listening to, what we've seen in the past week or so. Then we're going to do a topic on physical versus digital reading, which one we prefer, pros, cons, things like that. And then we're going to review Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill Volume 1, just the manga.
That'd be exciting.
Yes.
So,
first up, what we've been doing.
What have you been up to?
For me, specifically,
yes,
I have been listening to a bunch of light novels. So I just finished listening to Overlord Volume 15, which just came out a couple weeks ago. It's really good. It's one of those 2-parters again. So it's kind of like, okay, I want to know what happens next.
Right.
But it takes place in another part, well, not another part of the world, but a little farther from where most of the story has taken place so far.
Okay.
So it kind of heads towards a different territory. It's towards the Elf Kingdom, which you kind of get hints about earlier in previous volumes, but now it's taking a more center stage. We're going to go see where the elves come from, because before it's been mostly humans and seeing what they've been up to. So this time it's focusing more on the elves. Mm-hmm. So it's Ainz takes the 2 elf floor guardians with him. The whole idea is to go have them make friends since they're children. And then so it goes off and you're kind of seeing what other... Because there's the Elf King, who is incredibly powerful, but you don't really know his backstory yet. And then there's another kingdom that is also fighting the elves, who wants to kind of cleanse all races except humans, who kind of are very powerful, but Ainz and the Ainz Ogul haven't really dealt with them yet. They've kind of sporadically dealt with them, so it's kind of these 3 powers are almost at each other, and that's where the volume ends.
Oh, great.
Okay, so It's the second part will be the exciting part of the story. The first part is all the build up to all of this, and you kind of see where everyone's coming from. So it's interesting, but it's one of those... It would have been better if it was 1 volume, but it's 2. So that's volume 15. Okay. Then I listened to Mushoku Tensei, volumes 1 and 2. I have watched the anime and read a bunch of the manga. So this is kind of just another view of the story, and I hadn't read them, so it's like, okay, I'll check them out.
Yeah.
They're really good. It's a little different hearing it in the light novel form, but it's pretty much the same story, just get different details. So it's really good. It's one of those, when you're watching the show, you're seeing a lot of stuff happening on the screen, so you're not really thinking about what's going on, but as you're listening to it or reading it, it's like, if you actually think about what's going on, it's like, this is a 35-year-old person who's living his life as a 5-year-old.
Yep.
So it's kind of like, is this okay? It seems kind of weird. From all the things he's talking about, it's like, not sure this is a good thing.
Welcome to the joys of Isekai.
Yeah. Like, I like the story, and the character is interesting, and the world's interesting, but it's like, you don't want to think too much about it. It's like, this is getting kind of creepy sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's good, and I think, so the light novels are done. The anime is not, and the manga is definitely not. Mm-hmm. I think there's 21. I forget how many. There's over 20.
There's more than 20. I was going to say 26.
It's quite a lot. And I think they just started a second series. I think the anime covers the first 2 light novels. I can't remember. But it's good. It's interesting. It's one of the first that really took off, because I think it started in 2014. So this was one of the big ones that has been going on for quite a while. And then the other thing that I've been kind of catching up on is I started watching and finished Lower Decks Season 2. So it's the Star Trek animated show.
Yep.
It's really funny. It's still hilarious. They get even more into the lore and callbacks to things. It's like, okay, there's some really... If you know your Star Trek, this is funny.
Yeah.
But even if you don't, it's still it's a funny show either way. But it's really good. It's one of those, of course, the season ends on a cliffhanger. It's like, okay, I gotta try to watch the second one. But it's good. I like it. Definitely check it out if you're into Star Trek. Cool. It's funny. It's like 10 episodes a season, roughly. Definitely check it out.
I've heard good things about it. I just have never seen it. And don't have access to normal television anymore.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
that's
haven't
good.
gotten to it yet.
If we get a chance, I'll let you borrow it.
Okay, sounds good.
So what you been up to?
For me, so I've read a couple of things, just a few. We'll start off with the one thing that I haven't been reading because it's a game. What? People play video games still. It's amazing.
What's a game?
So, it's like work but fun.
Oh, one of those things.
Yeah. One of the indie developers that I have on and off really enjoyed called Arkham Games. Their newest game called Heart of the Machine. Been a demo a few months ago. The early access just came out about 2 weeks ago. Basically, you play as a newly sentient artificial general intelligence that appeared in a dystopian future Earth where humanity has spread to the stars and realized everyone still on Earth is a terrible bastard, and so they're not allowed to leave. But they still have future tech. So it's a cyberpunk dystopia where everyone is trapped on the planet by the rest of humanity and are slowly just building up and self-destructing. And so you just show up, get control of your androids, and try to survive. Arkham games are all very systems-based. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things that are going on. It's very open-ended. It's very free-form. Like, one of your earliest tasks is like, hey, do you want to help the homeless or shoot them? You can do either one. And so it's like, okay, if you do this, you get this benefit. If you do that, you get that benefit. Oh, so you've decided to build shelters for the homeless. Great. But now they need food and water. How do you want to feed them? Like, do you want to build water plants? Do you want to build them, quote-unquote, Soylent Green? Like, what would you like to do? And there's lots of different options. The game is not very hard for quite some time.
So is it a simulation game?
Yeah, it's a turn-based simulation game. There is like a strict map, but it's randomly generated. Mm-hmm. You move your units around, but you are the AI. So like your robots will go out, get blown up, and you'll just build a new one. And it's like you barely even notice the cost. Most of your resources, like, you have to gather them, but unless it's actually important, they don't even bother showing up on the screen. It's like, oh yeah, you need like 750 metal bits or whatever. It's like, yeah, but I get 3,000 a turn. I don't care. It could be a problem if a bunch of things go bad, but that's probably not going on right now. You will often finish a mission where you have to go and attack something or steal something, where you'll send your androids to go and do it. They'll all die. You'll make new ones. They'll all die again. You'll make new ones. They'll all die again. You'll make new ones. And this time you figured out how you should do it to make the most use of the skills that you have. And this time you'll win. It's very forgiving early on. I played like 7 or 8 hours of the demo. Then I played the early access, and I'm about 9 hours in, and I'm finally through the opening. And now it's, okay, now you can truly do whatever you want. There's like 16 endings you can get to. You're slowly building up to a bunch, like, to the super intelligence and all sorts of other sci-fi topics. And I already know of one major sci-fi topic that's coming up that I haven't even gotten to. And it's like, oh yeah, this completely changes how the game will work when you get to it. This entirely new gameplay loop will come in. It's like, oh, great, sure, yeah. I'm 12 hours in. Yeah, that's what I need to know that, like, I'm 27 hours away from the next major part of it. Runs well. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of weird interaction stuff. But the game works great. It's a lot of fun if you can get past that. As for reading, the list is quite long, so we're going to keep this a little bit shorter. But Banished from the Heroes Party 5. Good. Series continues to be fun. Gets more into the slow life. Demon Slayer 1. Cool. Yeah, all right. I think I can start to see where this is going. This could be an interesting series. I get why people kind of like it. Too early to see much more than that, though.
Yeah, it gets better as it goes on.
Yeah. Haikyuu 1. Sport volleyball.
Yes.
Yay. It's an entire volume of the two main characters being annoyed at each other. But it's actually kind of really fun and enjoyable.
Yes.
And then I got Mission Yozakura Family 2 through 5. and I blitzed through all those. Wow, that's really freaking good.
You like it?
It's really good. I like it so much. Then Down to 9/11 came out.
Yep.
That was really good. Still sort of building up to something, but much better than last time. More things happen.
Mm-hmm.
You start to see what's going to happen next, and it's been good. Shangri-La Frontier 19, same thing. Really super good. Still just getting towards fighting the next Colossus. I don't know, they have started fighting it. Haven't resolved it yet. But excellent. Excellent. There's still a little bit of... It's like the first book of the Weathermon fight where...
Okay.
They're getting into it.
Yep.
They do a bunch of stuff. I don't think it's going to last that much longer, but there's a lot of really interesting weirdness about what's his name? The Colossus they are fighting.
I forget. I haven't read 19 yet, so I don't know.
They have started fighting. He can reverse things, and the fight gets real weird, real fast, and real silly, real fast, but it's a lot of fun because he can reverse things. So he just starts flipping different things about everybody. Oh, hey, we're going to swap everyone's gender because... Oh, hey, we're going to swap everyone's stats. That's where book 19 ends, is everyone's stats get swapped. So Sunraku goes from like the super agile glass cannon to monster tank.
Katarnid.
Yes, Katarnid. So it's the fight with Katarnid. Katarnid is... his entire purpose is reversal, and so he starts messing with everything. Swaps everyone's gender, swaps everyone's stats, swaps their buffs, swaps all this other things. And it's a lot of fun. Instead of build up, this is stuff is happening and continuing to build up. It's going to be... 20 is going to be great. If it continues to 21, 21 is going to be great. Can't wait.
So this, for the story, this was supposed to be the first Colossus they fought, right? Story-wise.
In the game, the first Colossus they were supposed to fight was Katarnid. Okay. And there's a couple of things that Katarnid seem... Because Katarnid starts talking to them in this weird, like, I am like a god, and so I'm going to bestow my prophecy onto you. Not like that, but in more godly prophecy way.
Okay.
So it gives that sense of, like, massive boss with something that you need to know. From what they've said in the story, yes, he was supposed to be the first one, and it does make sense. It's a lot of interesting stuff, and the reversal thing is, like, constantly coming up with new ways to do it. So it's been interesting, and the characters are obviously, like, all, like, the gender swap one. It's like, oh yeah, everyone becomes a girl. And I was like, ha ha ha, except for the girls who become guys, and it's like, oh god, he's handsome. But it's all the characters who've been involved in Katarnid are all there, and they're all being goofy and weird, and like, it's a lot of fun, but it doesn't... It's the same thing that Shangri-La always does, where it feels like, okay, yeah, we're going to do this to do, like, something a little bit different and just mess around for a while. Like, yeah, let's have the main character be a girl for a while and just, like, have that be crazy action woman. Sure, we'll do that for a while, because that's how Shangri-La works.
Yeah, you just do it just for fun.
And it is very fun.
Cool. It's on my list, and I will check it out.
Then there's Spy Classroom 1, which is a light novel about not post-World War I, not Europe type existence, where now spies are everywhere.
Okay.
The best spy group from this small country all got killed except for one. And so the last person from it, who is this super genius, ends up being put in charge of a group of complete washouts from all the different spy academies for a impossible mission that got all of his friends and family killed. And he has no idea how to teach them, and they're all bad at what they do, but have powerful talents. I'm not going to say any more because it is very much a plot twist, character-driven spy novel, but it's very good. Okay. So it was a lot of fun.
I didn't know about this one. I thought you were talking about Assassination Classroom at the beginning.
Nope.
That's a different story.
Nope. It's set sort of in a world like Spy X Family too, but it's not that either. And it's that very classic plot twist spy movie type thing. Mm-hmm. But instead of being like Jean Le Carré or James Bond, it's random high school Japanese girls, except not Japanese.
Because of course.
that's what like all the washouts are also like all girls, and he's like it's funny in moments, it's weird in moments, but it's very good.
Okay.
It has a lot of fun. The characters are bad as spies, but have these really interesting, cool powers. So it was a lot of fun. It is a series. It could have ended there, but it goes on, and it's definitely really good. Hero in the Sage Volume 3. This has been one that I picked up recently. It is now fantastic. It is now gone from like, oh, this is really good, to like, this is fighting for a top 5 of the year.
Okay.
And this has just come out. This is the story of the hero, the military master, versus the sage, the person who invented magic. We're on opposite sides of a war. Then they both die, get reincarnated 1,000 years in the future, and don't know what's going on. Volume 3, you start learning what's actually going on, and it gets crazy. It is a lot of fun.
You told me about this one, and it sounded interesting, but now it sounds like it's... I hadn't read the first one yet, because when you first told me about it, it's like, okay, kind of want to see where this goes first. It sounds like, okay, yeah, this is probably one I should look into.
The first one is very fun, and it feels like, okay, we're going to get to somewhere eventually. But it's the kind of one where you feel like, oh, maybe we'll get to some plot in like book 7 or 8. It's like, no, book 3. Oh, okay, we're going to actually tell you a lot. And we're going to show you a bunch of other things that are ridiculous. And then something that you haven't known about for a while is just going to show up and turn out to be true. It has a lot of time travel. It has a lot of like people in the past talking to the future, people from the future sending stuff to the past. But it works really well. It's got a very interesting magic system. It's not super tight because the main characters are just so absurdly overpowered, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Even though they follow it, it's just their level of power just destroys everything else that exists. But it's interesting, and they're clearly continuing to set more things in place. So book 3 is the moment it's gone from like, okay, this is really good, to okay, this is fighting for my attention the moment it comes out. And it already was, because it was like, oh, it came out with Dan to Dan and Shangri-La Frontier, like within 3 days of each other. And it's like, yep, it's out. All right, I'm going to read it now.
Okay, cool.
So then, because we're not even, in
Almost
terms
done.
of book numbers, we're only halfway, although in series, we're down to the last 2. Mission Yozakura Family, it's back. Volumes 6 to 14, because I decided, you know what, I should buy the whole thing. And then I read it in 2 days, because oh my god, it's really good. It's really freaking good.
It is.
Oh man.
I don't think 14's the end, though.
No, oh god, no.
Okay.
It's not even close. You said there was a time skip. There has not been anything.
Okay.
Time skip has not happened yet.
Okay, yeah.
No, I think volume 14 is about
I think it's
halfway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's all that are out so far.
Yes, that is all that is published as books in
Yes.
English. 14 came out a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
It does not have the spy plot twistiness of Spy Classroom has had yet, although it sounded like that was something that came later and slowly got added to. But the characters, the fights, the everything that's going on is just a ton of fun. It knows how to balance between a stupid filler joke chapter or two followed by like some crazy thing going on with all the different backstories and bringing the main plot forward. It does a really good job of that. Absolutely fantastic series.
That was the one thing I liked about that series, is like there always seems to be something moving the plot forward.
Yep.
Even if it is a filler arc, there's hints that there's more going on. It's not just, we're here just to do nothing for a whole chapter or two. It doesn't matter. You could have skipped this and nothing would have changed. But at least that one feels like, okay, there's always something happening, and eventually you learn more. And that's one of the things I liked about it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about them is those like small random chapters. They're also always either one of two things. They're 2 characters, usually 2 of the siblings, who interact, but you haven't seen them much. And it's like, this is a chapter of us just watching the 2 of them do something.
Yeah.
Or it's something silly and simple but short. It's like, it's 1 chapter.
Right.
Something just finished. Here's a goofy little thing in between, and then we're going back to the next thing that's going to take 5 chapters.
I really like it. It's good.
It is excellent. And then for the final thing that I finished, because if I included the things that I didn't finish but had started on, there'd be another 4 or 5 books here. Peddler in Another World, Light Novels, volumes 3 through 7. So I'm not going to talk about too much about this. A wink, as we say on the show. But basically, kind of standard fantasy isekai, except the main character has the ability to go back and forth between the other world and the Japanese world, and has the ability to turn money from one world into the other. So he decides to become a merchant, and he goes to this other world to sell a bunch of Japanese stuff, gets the money, goes back to Japan. The vast majority of it's set in the other world. He goes back to Japan, but he doesn't really live or do much there, other than go and find cool things to buy and sell in the other world. So there's not a lot of him trying to live in Japan with this otherworldness.
Okay.
And since his only 2 real powers is converting money to Japanese yen and back, and a really big inventory, those are his only 2 actual skills.
That's very useful, though.
Yeah, so it's a lot of him being a merchant, but very silly, very lighthearted, like always, ends up surrounded by people who are the most powerful of everything. But they're generally pretty earned. It'll alternate between a very slapstick book to a very action book to a very emotional book, back to goofy slapstick, back to goofy action. It's always generally pretty funny. It's never too serious. It's never too heavy. You get to watch him, like, figure out ways to make more money and, like, solve problems. It's a nice little fun story. Definitely a lighter weight series, but it sticks to its premise well. And he doesn't get too overpowered until, like, book 5. And then it's basically just, yeah, forget it.
How does he get overpowered if all he can do is turn money into money and store things?
So to say it in a way that's not spoilers. Okay, here's one thing I can say that's not spoilers.
Okay.
Because it's what you find out in book 1. So he can go to this other world because there's a door in his grandmother's house that goes to the other world. And that's because his grandmother was actually from the other world.
Okay.
You do eventually learn at the end of book 1 that his grandmother is called the Immortal Witch.
Okay, so more to come.
He may or may not meet with his grandmother at some point, because his grandmother that he thought died 7 years ago may be an immortal witch of extraordinary power from this alternate world.
Yep.
And there are other people like that in the world, and it's basically just he convinces them to hang out with him. And so it's just like, yeah, okay, who's gonna stop me?
Yeah.
The vast majority of problems are not things that can be solved by, like, hitting someone with a big stick.
Okay.
It's palace intrigues or dealing with other merchant companies and things, or helping someone emotionally move on from the death of their parents. Those are, like, the actual problems that the whole novel, each novel is about solving. And they're interesting problems, and it's like, you can't just solve it by punching someone in the face. And the 1 or 2 times when it is about punching someone in the face, it's the end of those when he gets the people who are super strong and can then punch anyone in the face.
Okay.
So he has to solve it before he gets them.
Yep. Okay.
And it's like, okay, we've solved that. Now we never have to deal with this again. It's been a fun, lighthearted series just to sort of wander through and play with. Not something too heavy. Yeah. So
sounds good.
Another 6 books of that. So for our first topic for today, we're going to be talking about physical versus digital comics, novels, etc. We read a lot, as you could probably tell from the length of the last section.
Yeah.
And digital books, digital comics are becoming a big thing. And we wanted to take a moment and talk about the differences between them, which one you may or may not like, why you should try them, what makes them good. First of all, though, the most important thing, you could call it Rule 1, whichever you like better is better. This is just our opinions. This is just things that we think matter. But if it comes down to one and you just like one over the other because the things you like about it or the things that are good about it you care more about, that's fine.
But I can't decide.
Well, good. I made a whole spreadsheet of different things that are better about one versus the other.
Aw, teach me, Professor.
I didn't even have to get my MBA. I don't know why I needed an MBA to become a professor, because I need a PhD instead.
Yes.
That's why I'm not a teacher anymore.
So why do you like physical?
When we talk about physical books, we're talking about on paper, something you can pick up, read, or from bookstores, from online, etc. When it comes to things on paper, what I've always found to be the biggest difference is it is so much easier to read. Reading on paper, reading physical media is just easier on your eyes. It's more comfortable. You can do it for a long time and not get tired, not get bothered by it. Screens have gotten a lot better. I have used computer screens since I was born, basically, as have you. We have grown up in this, and yet still, a paper book is just easier to read when you're reading for a long time.
Yes.
They're also good if you like collecting stuff. Having a bunch of digital things on a device doesn't look as cool as having a bunch of books on your shelf. So if you are doing collecting with books, obviously physical is going to be a lot better. Another thing that has been happening on and off for a long time, but is happening again, is you can't lose physical books by having them taken away by the digital company that sells them to you. This has started happening in games again, in movies again, where the company that sold you the quote-unquote copy just deleted it from your account. And there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, they sold you a license, not an actual copy.
And while up until just now they said, oh yeah, you can keep that license forever, now they decided, except for that one, we're just taking that away. It's gone. And if you have a physical copy, they can't do that. I've also always found that when it comes to the really high end, the really nice art books, the really quality hardcovers and things like that, physical paper high-end products are always better than high-end digital versions. You might get technically a better display for certain art with a lot of detail. You might be able to zoom in and see more detail on a digital thing, but the actual art books and coffee table books and those sorts of things, the hard copies are always much better at being these high-end beautiful things.
Yeah, because I have a few of those Dark Horse leather-bound volumes, and those are really nice. They're huge.
Yeah.
They're a little more expensive, but it's typically 3 volumes in one, so the price comes out to be close to the same.
I have a couple of like art books from authors or from series that I was interested in the past, and I have like 4 or 5 of them. And yeah, I could get all of the images online or find them, but they never look as good as they do in this curated, carefully designed, very quality printed paper. They just come out better, even if the image itself is the same. There's just something about the paper that makes it look better. The effort's just been put into it. And the last really simple but can be very important pro, especially if you live near somebody who cares about these things, you can share them really easily. Yes. Oh yeah, I just finished reading this book. Okay, here you go, friendo person. You can read it, and I'll borrow this one from you, and now I don't have to buy it.
Or the library, as we talked about before. You can borrow physical books from the library. You can borrow digital, but it's can be a little more complicated. But it's easy to just go pick up a book from the library or a friend and say, hey, check this out, or I read this, is this cool? Or it could be that I read this, it wasn't my thing, maybe it's yours, and then you get to keep it. But digital doesn't quite allow you to do that.
That's my list for pros. Is there any other things that you can think of for physical bound books or paper versions of things that you think are really important?
You can sell them.
True.
I have a bunch of books where they're no longer in print, so I can't get the rest physically unless I want to pay a ton of money. But I can get them digitally for a decent price. So I could sell my physical copies, which you can't do with a digital one. So if I have an old collection that I'm trying to say, okay, I liked all these series, but my shelves are now too full, so I need to make some room for some newer series I like. So some older series I have most of the collection, so I could sell them on eBay or sell them online or bring them to a thrift store or something like that, or donate them. You can't do that with digital, but you can do that with physical. So that's one of the things that if I had, like, I have the whole set of Full Metal Alchemist. If I feel like I don't want this anymore, I'm moving, I don't have space and things like that, I guess I'm selling the whole set of Full Metal Alchemist. And someone may buy it, and I'll get some of my money back.
That's definitely true.
27 volumes, so it's not nothing.
I have never sold any of my books ever, and probably never will, so that's why it won't be on my list.
Yes.
But you are correct. That should be on the list. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely true.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to resell it at all is definitely something that you can do with physical that you just can't with anything else.
And they look cool on a shelf.
Yes, that
sometimes.
Even if they aren't like super pretty, like I literally didn't do this just to rag on Naruto again, but it's the closest volume that I can see from my desk. But Naruto's volumes spines aren't super pretty, but they're nice, and seeing them all lined up is this sort of like, oh yeah, I've got all of the series, and there's a little bit on there to be like, oh, I remember that volume, oh, I remember that. Digital like bookshelves exist, but they just never work as well as a physical shelf.
Because I have a few books where I think it's Seven Deadly. No, it's
The Seven Deadly Sins.
Yeah. So in that one, I believe I can't remember where my copies are, but in that, I think all of the spines form a scene. So as you go through the volumes, it actually looks like something instead of each one just being an individual picture.
Yep.
The one thing that has annoyed me, it will always keep annoying me, is so the Berserk volumes. The single volume ones are, the spine is designed to look like a book, like a leather-bound book. However, some number of years ago, it was designed so that like the Dark Horse picture, like the logo and the Berserk name and the volume number and things like that, all fit roughly in the spine of the book and like where they're supposed to, based on how the leather bound is wrapped and things like that. But then they changed how the logo was done. So everything is shifted. So now it doesn't line up if you buy older volumes and new volumes and mix them together. Now it just looks weird.
Yeah.
So that's one thing with the Berserk ones. Like, that's so annoying because they changed the design and now they don't match with the old ones.
Oh, Dark Horse.
Yeah. You
have some of the greatest series of all times, and yet I can constantly think of tiny things that annoy me. Yeah. And I don't care because you have the best series of all time.
But like the One Piece ones are all bright, colorful, and they look cool on the shelf.
Yeah.
Like some of them are interesting. The Mashal ones look like books on the shelf. So there's a lot of ones that they take their time. They make the book look nice to then stick it on your shelf.
Yeah.
And this is the English version. The Japanese versions are different.
They are different, but they do the same sort of thing. With novels, they are much less like that, but that's the Japanese version. Japanese book, like novel collections, the book spines are greatly simplified, but their books are also physically made quite small.
Yes, they are smaller. That is another thing.
Even still, like having 8 or 10 books of a single series lined up on a shelf, they're still going to look quite nice. Maybe not as nice as something like an entire drawn-out scene over the course of several volume spines, or this really cool faux leather design like in Berserk, but the physical collection where it's like, oh, there's that section of books. Man, I love that series. There they all are. I can see them.
Yeah, and that's another thing. As you see them, for the most part, they're all roughly the same size. There are exceptions to the rule, however. As soon as you get to, like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, they're cool leather-bound books, but they are not the same size as everything else. So if you have a shelf that fits traditional manga, it is not going to fit one of those. And there's a bunch of other, like the Fruits Basket volumes are, because they're combined now, they're much taller.
Oh, yep.
So those don't fit on a regular shelf.
Omnibuses are different from regular volumes.
But it depends, because some omnibuses are still the same height. They're just wider. So it's one of those, because they're roughly the size of like a DVD in height. So if you have a shelf like that, great. Regular volume will fit. But as soon as you get into something a little bigger, a little more robust, but then sometimes that's the only way to get those volumes. Goodbye Eri is too tall to fit on the next to a regular manga. Or, as I said, the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Fruits Basket ones, the Inuyasha omnibuses are too tall. But you get more paper space, so it looks bigger.
Because it is bigger.
Well, yeah, it is different.
But it looks and is different and doesn't fit as easily on a shelf, especially if you have one just set up for that size.
Which is what I have. But even if you don't have that, if you have a bookshelf, if you put it next to a regular volume, it looks odd, or it can look odd, because you have this little tiny book next to a really big book, and it's like, okay, that doesn't quite line up, because they're also a little deeper too.
And that's also a thing that does happen in Japan, because for a lot of manga there is different versions of how it's released. There's the original magazine, but then when it's first released in a book, it has a smaller physical size. And then if the series is popular enough, they'll eventually release the tankobons, which are these physically taller, thicker, better quality versions that are just a different size. Two of the same volume of the series, and put them next to them, and one of them is just physically bigger. And they'll just republish the entire thing that way. I think that is more of the size of something like Goodbye Areas compared to the more traditional, like, first publishing of stuff in English too, is a bit more of... I don't think either one of them are the same size as they are in Japan, but that sort of ratio difference between, like, the slightly taller ones and the regular ones is about the same ratio difference as it is in Japan, and that's just how it is.
But that's one thing that physical does have, is has multiple versions, or typically the digital has one version, and that's it.
I don't know, though, if I would always count that as a pro unless you're specifically a collector.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you're collecting, that does matter. The one thing I will say also negative, I think they've fixed this, is that if you look at very old volumes, depending on how you take care of them, it can turn yellow based on the paper.
So that is a paper thing, that's acid-free paper. The nicer versions of things will use that, or certain series will use that. Ranma 1/2, when it came out in English, the first printings were all on acid-free paper, and these, like, really nice, extra large books. And then later, once manga, like, ended up being popular, they ended up printing a cheaper version. And the sort of standard manga style you'll see in the US, that's not acid-free paper. If it's exposed to a lot of light, it will yellow with time.
Yeah.
It needs to be a higher quality paper, so the more collector-y edition versions will probably have that.
Okay.
Keep it on a bookshelf and you take care of it. It shouldn't get too yellowed over time.
No, but it can happen.
It can definitely happen.
Yeah, so it's just something to keep an eye on.
If you want it to yellow on your own, you could go digital and then just add a filter on top.
Yes, which you can't do.
Speaking of, you can't do that with, you couldn't make it blue. You couldn't make everything blue with MS Paint. So talking about that, so for digital books, digital manga, digital things like that, the pros on it is, the first one, it's not a huge difference, but overall digital tends to be cheaper. Manga and novels are not very expensive anyway, but digital versions of them will never be more expensive. They'll usually be cheaper. And depending on all sorts of things with books and how available they are and how the quality of them, they'll be significantly cheaper per book for what is generally, like, quite good quality. These digital versions are not blurry. They are quite nice, and you can get them even today as low as like $6.
Yeah, even not on sale.
Yeah, even when they're not on sale, the series will just be like, yeah, it's a $6-7 a book series. The physical book will be like $10 to $12.
Yep.
That's not uncommon to see. On price, you will see deals and sales and bundles and things like that for digital copies as well. A lot of books that I own, I just own because it's like, oh, hey, the new volume came out, so they're going to release a bundle of everything but the last 3 books for like $20 on Humble or something, or everything's 70% off. You don't see that as much with physical books because the shipping and the physical material, if the series is continuing and popular, they can't afford to drop the price that much. But getting people into the series is easier with digital. At the same time, eBay exists, as you had mentioned. Other people will sell their physical books somehow, and you can get deals on it through that way by purchasing used copies. Digital books, if you are currently reading them, you can bring them with you. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books in your pocket.
Yeah.
In your backpack.
I've done that.
On whatever device you're using. You can have hundreds of these with you at any time. You can preload, like, I don't know, the first 14 volumes of Mission Yozakura Family and take it with you and just be reading it all the time wherever you are. And then get bored halfway through and read 7 light novels because you brought those with you. You can't do that as easily with physical books, obviously, because they take up space. And that's another thing. Digital books don't take up any actual physical space. If you live in an apartment, if you share space with a lot of other people, you don't have room for bookshelves and things like that. Digital makes a lot of sense. You need digital storage space, although usually you don't have to hold the digital copies on your hard drives. You can just re-download them as you need them most of the time, 90% of the time, but there are exceptions. But even then, if you had to have it on a hard drive is the size of a book, but can hold hundreds or thousands of books. The physical space that you need for a large collection basically is non-existent when it's digital.
Yeah.
If you are really into a series that's still ongoing, especially for manga, simulpubs, immediate releases, those are all basically only digital. Unless you live in Japan and can buy the weekly magazine.
Yes.
Which, if you're listening to the show, you probably aren't.
You never know.
Because you're probably not listening to the show. I mean, with the 2 downloads that we have. No, but you could be. And if you are, then you don't need that. But if you're anywhere else in the world, or you don't want it in Japanese, because you're getting the translation versions of it, those are not released physically. The entire thing is translated in English, then released as a book. They're not released as a weekly magazine. They're not released as a monthly magazine. So if you want the most up-to-date of anything, you're gonna have to go digital. And you can get the most up-to-date. You can get right up to what is coming out nowadays with the way things are going the day it releases in Japan, which is kind of incredible. Any other positives you have for digital?
Yes. The one problem with physical versus digital is that in the physical version you'll have these 2-page spreads and then you get a nice seam down the middle. That doesn't happen in digitally. So you get this cool crazy scene, some either amazing fight scene or some really big like reveal. It's like, oh, 2-page spread and there's a black seam right down the middle cutting this person's face in half or things like that. You don't get that digitally. So all the pictures look amazing. You can zoom in and out. Yeah, so that's one very good thing about digital. You can really enjoy the artwork digitally because you can get the full picture. It's all digital. You can zoom in. You can see everything.
That's another thing of like digital adjustment. Zooming in, zooming out, doing anything that you need to make it physically easier for you to read. It'll be available in more languages.
Yes.
If you are like, you're listening to us in English, but you're not an English reader, you're not a Japanese speaker or reader, it might be in languages that you can read. That's more likely when it's digital than when it's physical because the materials cost is just not there.
And
just the cost of someone doing the translation and then putting it into the actual artwork.
Yeah. Another thing is they don't sell out. I've gone to plenty of bookstores like, oh, great. They have this series. I need book 4. Oh, they have 3 and 5. Well, that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they just don't have the series at all. So unless the series goes away from the digital store, it's always going to be there. Unlike if you go to Barnes & Noble or some other store. They have a huge selection, but it's like, I'm looking for One Punch Man. They have 7. And that's it. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't help me. But it's one of those, it's also one of those things, as we've seen, or as we've been talking about, sales happen a lot more often on the digital side, from what I've seen, than the physical side. It doesn't say the physical side, bookstores don't have sales, but it's fewer and usually very limited.
And usually the biggest time you'll see a bookstore with physical books have a sale is we're getting rid of this series.
Yeah.
So unless you can get everything that you need from that series then, you're probably not getting all of them. And you're probably like not going to be able to come back and get more.
And the other problem is the publisher may have decided, we're not going to print these anymore. So it could have been a series.
Dark Horse.
Yeah. I've found a series like Umineko. They're not making that physically anymore. I have the first 3 volumes. I have to spend hundreds of dollars to get the rest. So it's like, digital is the best I have. Or you have books that are only digital. Like, I believe Space Brothers is only digital. The one we're talking about later, I believe, is only digital. Or at least it was originally. Because a lot of times it will come out digital first. And then you could get a physical. But it may not.
Nowadays, yes. And that's a big thing. because there's other things to think about of just like a lot of older titles you can't get digital versions of.
Yes.
And a lot of new ones you can't get physical versions of.
Yep.
And hopefully you're not in a point where there's a series that you like and you can't get it anymore in the way that you have, or that you want to get something that just doesn't exist. You may not have a choice depending on the series. Like you brought up earlier, libraries will let you borrow books. Manga has gotten to be a big thing in the US, as I'm sure you can tell because you're listening to this show about us Americans talking about this. Libraries have them. Our local libraries in this small part of the East Coast, like there are series that I had not heard of, and I walked in the library and it's like, they've got all 17 volumes of it just on the shelf. It's like, oh, okay, sure. That was not the series I would expect them to have, but they picked that one and that's the one that they have. So that's a thing you can get. Light novels, maybe if you have a really big library that might have that, but there aren't a lot of physical editions of those as much as manga. They're not quite as popular. Digital libraries offering digital copies of things is also been growing and becoming more available, but that's still a little complicated, and there's no guarantee that they'll have digital access to these things either, whereas for the physical books it's a lot more likely to have. And on price, if you're like me and you read way too much when you still had way too much to do elsewhere in the week anyway, and you're looking at Shonen Jump's online thing and it's like, oh, only 100 chapters a day, I don't know if that's going to be enough for me when I get into my reading mood. Like, unless you're reading a lot, the price differences aren't that huge.
Yes.
And you probably have a phone or a computer or an e-reader or something like that. But if you don't and you need to buy one of those, all of the money you save from buying digitally is basically gone.
Yeah. Because if you want a good one to have a clear screen and battery life, because that's one of the big things.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there reading, you're just flipping pages, and you don't want the battery to die halfway through.
Yes.
Or you have to sit there plugged into the wall while you're reading. It's like, okay, this isn't helpful either, because I want to just take it and go places and read and things like that, or read on a plane.
Yeah. And that's going to take money. That's going to take investment. And like, if you're reading a few hundred books a year, the savings will matter.
Right.
But if you're reading like 20 or 30 books in a year, what you spend on that digital reader, whatever it is whatever you save isn't going to matter. Yeah. But again, back to rule one, most important, whatever you like best is going to be better. And these pros and values that we are pointing out just may not matter.
Right.
Note that they're here, but for you yourself, you're just going to have to look at it more of like, what is it that I really want? And is this going to matter enough to actually be important?
Yep. And you can still pick up relatively cheap physical books, but you may have to scour secondhand stores and things like that, or eBay. eBay's not the cheapest typically, but secondhand stores like there's a place by us called Boo Moose that sells secondhand books and CDs and things. They have a section. It's not always the greatest condition, but you can get them for a couple bucks for physical. But it's also what they have is what they have.
Yeah.
So you might have to do some looking around multiple stores, go to thrift stores and things like that to try to find things to add to your collection. But you can find them cheap. It's just a lot more work than just waiting for a sale for a digital copy. But then you also have it forever. Because the other problem with the digital is you have to have an account. And if you ever lose the account or the company goes under, well, you're now out of luck. Unless it lets you download them forever, which most don't.
It's going to depend on that. I have definitely seen places where you can. I've been a big user of Humble Bundle for a long time. Some of them, they have done it where it's just, here's on our site, you can just download DRM-free copies of the books that you've bought from us. And it's just like, there you go. Some of them, though, even through Humble, have been like, okay, we're doing it through this website, and then this website will give you access to it. And so you got to be careful with that. Physical books can't be taken away unless the book itself is lost.
Right. Yep.
So, final thoughts for ourselves.
Okay. I'll go first. So for me, I've for the most part, except for the last few years, not even a few years, last couple of years, have been a physical only person. I collected physical, I read mostly physical. The only time I didn't read physical was reading the weekly ones that come out. So I read them on my phone through the Shonen Jump apps and things like that. So that's the only physical, the only digital I did for a long time. Most of my collection is physical until last year or two when I started reading digital on my tablet and found that, oh, okay, two things. One, my physical collection is getting way too big now. And the second is there are a lot more books out there than I realized. So I found a lot of series that I had never heard of. It's like, oh, I'll just pick this up. It's a couple bucks. I'll just try it. It's like, hey, this is really good. Which, if you go to Barnes & Noble, it's like, okay, they have the most popular ones, but that's it. Because they only have so much space, too. So it's like, okay, I've seen this one, I've heard of this one. But you can't just pick up one and read it. So you can read it in the store, but it's one of those, I don't want to read it in the store right now. I want to read it later. But you might find a sale for the digital one. It's like, okay, well, this is $2. So if I don't like it, it's not the end of the world. It's like, oh, it's actually pretty good. So the next one's a couple bucks and things like that. And there's sales. And it's like, okay. So now my plan going forward is if it's a series I really like, then I'm going to get it physically if I can. But if it's one that's just okay, or if I think, yeah, it's fine, I'm going to think about it. But most likely I'll just keep it digital. And then I'm going to get rid of a lot of the ones that I have physical, but it's like, okay, I got it because I was interested at the time, but I'm not going to pick this up. It's not one that I'm going to read all the time. So I'm probably going to get rid of onesie twosies that I've bought to just try out the series. And it's like, that's not really for me. Get rid of those. I could still get them digitally, so I could finish the story. But I'm only going to save the physical ones for okay, this is one that I love, so I always want to have this no matter what. So that's my plan going forward. Physical for the ones I really care about. Digital for everything else, just because, one, it saves space. It can be cheaper, depending on when you buy it. And there's just so many more choices than just going to my local Barnes & Noble or even Amazon. It's like, okay, you see, oh, this series looks cool. And then it recommends all these other ones. Like, I'm not interested in any of those. So I'm just going to pick out the ones I want. But websites like Bookwalker, they have so many that come out, and it's so focused on just light novels, manga, things like that. You could just see all the different series. Like, oh, I haven't even heard of any of these. Let's just take a preview of this one, preview of that one. Oh, that one's relatively cheap. I'll pick that one up, pick that one up. Oh, that one's on sale. I like that one. And so it really helps that way. So I'm going to do both. Yeah. See how it goes, and go from there.
No, I think that's good. As for me, so I have been reading books digitally for a long time. I got a Kindle back when Kindles were new, like second edition, not like first edition, but like second edition Kindle. So I had one in like 2008, and I've had one ever since then. To me, having a good thing to read on has been the most important part. I have read on my phone. I have, regrettably, had to read things on a computer screen. I don't ever want to do that again. I now have I got a really nice e-ink digital tablet because I also had found Bookwalker at this time, and I was starting to get into this, and I was like, man, I want to read this, like, more manga and things like that. So let me start off first with Kindle shit. Get rid of your Kindle. Get away from Amazon. Amazon does have a lot of stuff, and if everything you want is on Amazon and you can stay there, fine. But like you said with Bookwalker, like so many of these other sites, there's so much more out there, and not very much of it is on Amazon. And I now have a non-Amazon full-size tablet e-ink color e-reader, and I can put any Android app on it I want, and all of these things have those apps, so I can read from any digital store I want on this really nice screen. I can carry it with me wherever I go, and I can still buy stuff off Amazon. All the stuff I bought on Amazon, I can still read on it, and I can read other stuff. That's the biggest problem with Kindle, is if it's not on Amazon, you can't use it. Even if you buy the DRM free, completely open source book version of it, you can't put it on a Kindle. It doesn't work nearly as well as the Amazon books. It'll always have weird problems with it. So for me, as someone who got so used to having a Kindle, got so used to having this really nice thing to read digitally, getting away from that for a couple of reasons, but also because I wanted to read more manga and think like you're going to need to do that, and you're going to have to put money into it if you want to do that, unless you are able to read on a computer screen, or you can read on your phone, which I have also done. It's not my favorite, but I can do it. I've read manga on it. I can do it. But having that really nice thing, that for me was massive, and now I'm just reading tons of stuff. I have my family. We don't have a lot of space. We live in an apartment, so I don't have room for books physically, even though I like that. I am a book collector. As I said, I forgot that you could sell them. So I like physically having them, but space matters, and having all these digital volumes available is really good. I like weird things. So having the entire massive availability of basically everything that's been released in English in the last several years, there's at least a digital version of. Some of my older favorite series don't have a digital version, but everything that's new, if it has a physical version, it also has a digital version. So pretty much anything that comes out, I can still get. Pretty much anything that anyone can go to the bookstore and pick up, I can get too. I just don't have to physically have the book. Yeah, there's a lot of risks involved in it. Like, something happens to the accounts, if the websites go away. Yeah, that would really suck. But I'm okay with that. There are several series that I have the physical versions of from when I was growing up. And if something were to ever happen to those physical versions, even if the digital version existed, which for some of them it doesn't, but even if they did, I would probably bite the bullet and buy them again physically, searching around and paying all that money for it, because it's like those books matter so much.
Yeah.
But there's very few series these days where I would want to do that. To jump back to one of our earlier episodes of like our favorite books from last year, Isla Sometimes Hides Her Feeling in Russian. Probably one of the best series ever in years. I'm not convinced I want physical copies of it.
Okay.
I might, but...
Is it available physically?
It might be.
Okay.
It's not, even though it's like, this is on par with some of my other series of like, this is my favorite series of all time. It's in like that top 10 of what I've ever read. I'm still not sold on, I really want to get that physically.
Okay.
Because the places where I do a lot of my shopping, Bookwalker is run by Kadokawa. Okay. Yeah, Kadokawa, the Japanese publisher. They're not going anywhere. No. Not easily. There'll be warnings. There'll be time, and it would be like Warner Brothers going out of business. Okay, Warner Brothers went out of business. Someone else is going to buy them, and those things will still be available.
Yeah.
There are other places that I go where I get stuff where you got to be a little bit more careful about it. But putting the money down for that really nice e-reader has made it so comfortable. Having a bunch of places I can go to get whatever weird series that I come across in my meanderings through the internet, and have it all on 2 devices and be able to read it at any time, that's just become so much better for me. And so that's where I'm at. And so I'm probably not going to get much more physical unless it's an art book. It's something really, really important to me, and I don't know how important it would have to be for me to want to do that, or it's something that's old and hasn't become digitally available. Because there are still series that were absolutely tantamount to manga and pop culture and stuff, and just, the digital versions just don't really exist yet.
I think that'll change, but there's a lot that aren't digital, or they're only digital for certain sites and not others. So, yeah.
It's the weird ones that, like, I grew up reading that are oddballs that just haven't become available again.
Yeah.
Saikano, Saishu Hekikanojo, She the Ultimate Weapon, was one of the earliest Viz titles. There is not a digital version of it available right now, as far as I've seen. That was one of the series that started coming out in the US when Naruto started coming out.
Right.
Naruto is available digitally. Saikano is not. But if I lose my physical books, I'm going on eBay and I'm I'm finding new ones because that's how much it matters to me.
Yeah, and this is a whole separate issue of, okay, it's out in Japan and not here.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of series that are old that weren't finished. Either weren't finished in Japan or here, or they were finished in Japan but never fully translated. So thus there's
Eden Written in This World from Dark Horse.
Or,
yes. What?
Hitman Reborn.
Yeah.
There's plenty of series where you can get mostly physical, but then you're still a few volumes short, and there's no digital at all. So that's a whole separate topic.
Yeah.
It's like,
To me, the biggest thing is that's let me say I'm going to go almost entirely digital from now on is my e-reader.
Yeah, that helps.
If I didn't have that, I would probably have read several of the series that I really liked, but I probably wouldn't have read nearly as much as I have in the last year, and I would not have enjoyed it. I can sit and read, as you heard earlier, several dozen books in 2 weeks, and it's not hard. It's not painful. I can take it with me wherever I go, and I enjoy it. I am a fast reader, but this to me was a huge change, having this tablet. And for other people, a regular tablet will be fine. For a lot of manga, my phone works.
Yeah.
But
it's not the best, but it works.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me was just that moment where it crossed over from, okay, digital's cheap and convenient, but it's not as nice to read, whereas physical is expensive and I don't have a lot of choices, but like I can sit and read it and reread it over and over again and never be bothered by it. And now that I can do both with this one thing, it's like, okay, I'm done. Like, I don't need anything else.
Right.
Getting away from Amazon's really restrictive thing. It's not that there isn't a lot of the stuff on Amazon. A lot of it is there, but not everything. And if you get a Kindle, you can only read stuff from Amazon and really poorly formatted PDFs. And it just doesn't work nearly as well. And so that's what I wanted to talk about here with this, is just like digital has changed in like the last 4 to 5 years from, yeah, I like it, to I don't know if I'm going to get a physical manga book again for years.
Yeah. I will pick up a couple, but it's only going to be ones that I really, really like, that I know I like. I'll try them out digitally first, see if I like the story. And I have to really like the story for me to want the physical versions.
Yeah.
But I probably won't just pick up a onesie twosie of a physical version anymore. I'll try it out digitally first, see if I like it. And if I do, I may get the physical eventually. But whatever you like, go with that. This is just my opinion.
100%. Whatever you like, whatever is easiest for you. If you don't mind reading on a computer screen, good. Save the several $100s I had to spend on this fancy e-reader. Do what you like
if
first.
You want a whole library full of manga? Go for it. I don't have as much space to do that.
I don't have any space for it, but I want it.
Yes.
So there you go. Physical and digital. There
they
you are.
Both good.
Your entire answer is figure it out yourself. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just told you that.
Cheers. Big help.
I don't try, but I still succeed anyway.
So the review this week is going to be about Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill, Volume 1 of the manga. So this was originally a light novel, started back in 2016. I believe there's currently 16 volumes published. 15 are now in English. I believe the 16th one came out relatively recently. So it'll come out in English eventually. There's 10 volumes of the manga. There's one season of an anime, 12 episodes. It's good. I like it. It's so this story is very happy, kind of whimsical isn't quite the right word, but it's not a dark story, and the anime really shows that, especially with the intro. It's very happy-go-lucky. This is a fun adventure. So the author is Ren Eguchi of the light novel. This was published in North America by J Novel Club.
Yep, this was one of their earlier series too.
Yeah.
So it's been available in English for a pretty good amount of time.
Right. But I only heard of it from when the anime came out originally, and then I say, oh, there's a manga of it. But that is still relatively recent, because the manga is well behind the light novel now. Because the 10th volume of the manga just came out in English. I don't remember how many are in Japan. It's not too many more. So for anyone who doesn't know, and this is why we're talking about it, so this is a story about someone who gets sent to another world, gets a ridiculous skill, and just says, nope, I'm out. So it starts off, the main character goes by Makoda.
Yeah, Makoda,
yeah. And what the issue is, so he's a 27-year-old-ish salary worker, going his regular day, transported to another world. There's this big ceremony. It's like, okay, we summon 3 heroes. I mean 4. And they're like, what? There's a 4th one. And there's Makoda sitting on the ground. It's like, what just happened? And then there's 3 high school students sitting in front of him.
Yep.
They're like, oh, we summon these heroes to help protect our world. And wow, let's see your skills. Oh, hero.
Isn't he
not hero?
Yeah, isn't his title like a victim from another world too?
It is, yeah.
Yes.
His title is victim, not hero.
Yeah.
And it's like, huh, okay. And his skill, which is the absurd skill, which is the whole idea of this story, is online supermarket. So all of the people who are from this world have no idea what it is. And the 3 other heroes get skills like sword master, spear master, magic master, and all these things. And they're like, what? A supermarket? Ah, that's hilarious. And then as the king is kind of telling him why we summon these heroes, Makota's like, this is fishy as hell. Because he's looking around, it's like, there's all this money everywhere, except they need heroes to fight. They're just going to use us and get rid of us. So he's like, oh, since I have nothing, you could just give me some money. I'll get out of your way. I don't need to be involved in this at all. So they give him some money and kick him out. And from what I've read so far, of all the volumes I've read, you haven't seen those heroes yet. Again. So I don't know if they come up later, or it's like they're just gone. Because he's like, I got this money. I need to get out of here because they're going to realize he's some kind of powerful, because they don't really understand what supermarket online shopper means.
Yep.
So he's like, I got to get out of here. I'm out of this country. I don't want to be involved in any of this shady stuff that they're doing. So he's like, I'm out. So he goes, they give him some money. He goes buy some clothes to kind of blend in more. He's like, I'm trying to get out of here. And what he realizes is that his skill lets him open a window in front of him of an online supermarket. So what he can do is take coins from this world, deposit them in the screen, and then can buy things from a Japanese supermarket. And when he does that and he says purchase or send or things like that, a box appears out of nowhere and just lands on the ground, full of anything he wants, anything he purchased.
Yep.
So because of that, he's like, oh, I never run out of food and all that thing. But what this story really turns into is a really big cooking story where he talks and explains how to cook everything.
Yeah. Shocking. It's a Japanese isekai story, and it turns into food porn.
Yeah, it just huge displays of foods. Like, this is how you cook all these things. Here's all the ingredients. These big spreads of these are all the ingredients. This is how you cook it. And just a giant close-up picture of this hot steaming bowl of food. Okay, yeah, this is what the story's really about.
Yeah. So I have not read the manga, but I have read the light novel version of it. So I'll be adding in a little bit on that. But this is pretty much exactly word for word how it goes in there too. Someone of the other world leaves when he realizes how shady everything is, discovers his supermarket ability, and then it just evolves into cooking.
Yeah.
All the time.
And he can buy things besides food from the online supermarket. So he buys himself pots and pans, a burner, and the world that he's transported to is on the medieval fantasy side. So you have mages and knights and things like that. So he buys a stove, and one of the people's like, what is this magical device? He's like, don't touch that.
Yeah.
And one of the other things he learns is that he can cook food in this world from things he finds. Anything that he cooks from Japan actually gives people buffs. So if he cooks some soup or something like that and then feeds it to other people, it actually makes them temporarily better. Yep. So while he was trying to get out of this country that he's like, this is shady, I'm out of here, he hires an adventuring group. That's like, I need a guide because I don't know where I am. So I need you to help me get to the next country safely because I have a skill that makes me good at buying things and nothing else.
Yeah.
So help me get to this other country, and I can pay you because I have money that I got from the king. But I'll also feed everyone on the way, so we don't have to worry about that. So I'll take care of all the cooking. Because one of the other things is that he has, like a lot of these isekai, unlimited storage facility where you can just dump stuff.
Yep.
Oh, you got a box. All right, I took everything out of the box. Now what do I do with it? So he just shoves it into this magical portal of infinite storage. And it's like, okay, that'll come up later, and it's very important. So as he's following the adventures, they're kind of explaining the world to him. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of countries. This one's okay. This one's not okay. This is why these ones are at war and things like that. So as they're cooking, he's cooking for everyone to say, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever tasted. But because of that, the scent goes into the air. It's like, oh, something is attracted to this. And that's when you meet the second main character, a giant Fenrir. So a giant mystical wolf shows up. It's like, give me some of that. And everyone's like, what? And that's where the first chapter ends. Mm-hmm. So this Fenrir becomes, long story short, the Fenrir becomes his familiar, and his name is Fel, to make it a little easier to remember. And you can summarize Fel in 2 words: powerfully hungry. So, can't stop eating, is insanely powerful because it's like a mystical beast that's lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and is just buffed and leveled beyond everything. So nothing even comes close to getting in its way. But it is incredibly hungry and only joins Makoto because he can cook.
Yep.
It's like, you feed me, I will help you. You don't feed me, I won't help you. So that's how they became friends. So it's constantly, I'm trying to feed this giant wolf as much food as I can come up with.
Yep.
And that's like how the story is just progressing. It's like, just feed wolf. Keep feeding wolf. It doesn't matter. Every time we stop, I have to feed the wolf.
There's a bit more to it. I don't know how much this comes over in the manga, but in the book, where it's a lot of, it is very much, I will protect you, so you need to feed me. Yeah. But also then Makoto is like, if you don't do this thing that we need to do, like not murder everyone in the town, I won't feed you. But I want to murder. It's like, no. Okay, fine.
He doesn't roll over for Fel, but it's also one of those things like, I did this, so now you have to feed me.
Yes, that sounds.
He's not going to let him do what he wants. Yeah. He holds back food, so he doesn't do things that he's not supposed to.
Yeah.
But because he's so powerful, and Makoto has limited resources, because while he has some money, it's not going to last forever, Fel goes out and says, like, well, I can only make so much food. You go get me some meat or something.
Yep.
So he goes off. A few minutes later, comes back with a giant bird, giant snakes. It's like, what am I going to do with this? So the adventuring group cuts the crazy animals he brought up, and what it turns out is, in the kind of what happens going forward, is that Fel will go out and hunt other mystical beasts, monsters, bring them back. Makoto stuffs them in his unlimited storage, and then brings them out at the guild, the Merchants Guild, and not the Merchants Guild, but the Adventurers Guild, and they'll butcher it, and he gets the meat and some of the materials, and that's how he makes money. So he brings in these crazy monsters, they butcher them, he gets money, they get meat, so then they feed the wolf. The problem is, Fel is so powerful, he brings in beasts that take armies to kill.
Yes.
And he shows up at Adventures. So I have this black serpent. I have all like 20 buffalo.
Wait, what? But you're E rank. This is like A plus, like gold adventurers only rank. What are you talking about?
And it's like, Fel did it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I've never even seen this stuff before. It's like a huge honor to cut up some of the things that Fel kills. It's like, okay, I could go my whole life without seeing one of these. And it's like, I have
5 of them.
Yeah, where I have 5 of them. It's like, but it's one of those things. And as usually going along, it's like, okay, Makoto gets into another city, and it's like, okay, I'm out of that crazy country that I didn't want to be in. Learning more about the world. It's like, okay, his plan is to just kind of survive for now. That's the one thing about the early volume and kind of the next few volumes is the plan is to just keep moving, not really settle down. There's no real story he's going for just yet. He just wants to keep moving and kind of learn stuff about what he's doing, what the world is and try to just... Because he doesn't want to be involved with the people who were summoned or that country anymore. So he's just trying to get away. So he joins the Merchant Guild to kind of help him make money. Mm-hmm. And he also joins the Adventurers Guild, as I said before, to kind of another way to make money. And one important thing that he realizes is that if he buys things from the Japan online market, it's so high quality compared to this world, he could collapse the economy for certain things. Because he's like, okay, things in this time frame are rare. So sugar, salt, peppers, things like that. Or in our world, which is where he comes from, is modern day Japan, this stuff is dime a dozen. You could get the 100-pound sack of it for $50. This is cheap now that we don't have to worry about trying to get salt. So he buys some salt, some peppers, and puts them in a different container because it's like, it's not going to work if he just shows up, oh, this is a iodized salt container. You just lift the lid and pour it. It's like, that's not going to work. So he puts it in like a typical bag for that era.
Yeah. And
he brings it to the merchant. It's like, I could give you all the gold for this. Just, it's so pure. It's amazing. I need to know where you got this. Who's your wholesaler? It's like, nobody. I got it. Don't worry about it. So
if I remember correctly, he's like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. Who's your wholesaler? Wait, no, I can't possibly ask that. You're a merchant. No one would give that away. Oh no, I totally understand. But I could give you so much money for this. Just 10 gold is fine. What? Oh my god, you're so generous.
Yeah. So he quickly realizes he can't sell that or he will destroy the economy. It's like, it worked in a pinch, and it was more of him just trying to try it out. Yeah. But it's one of those, if I do this, I will be hounded and will make enemies. Because if I sell this stuff, it's so good and worth so much money, the profit I make, I could just dump it all. And it's still crazy. Yeah. So he decides, nah, I'm not going to do that. He does it rarely, especially later on for a few other things. Yep. But for the most part, he does that. It's like, not going to do that anymore. But that's kind of where the story ends. He joins the two guilds, the merchants, to kind of become a traveling salesman so he can sell stuff as he's trying to just move around the country. Mm-hmm. And he joins the Adventurers Guild because they can butcher and he can actually earn a rank and do side jobs through them. Yeah. And it kind of ends where, well, at least the first volume of the manga ends where he gets a job, go out to the field and pick things. It's like, okay, I'll go out and kind of find the things that we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And he tells Fel, it's like, okay, I gotta go do some stuff. You could just go do what you want. Go find some food or something. So he's out picking stuff. Fel comes back. He's like, all right, I'm all done. Looks up at Fel, covered in blood. It's like, I found some stuff to eat. And that's kind of where it ends.
Okay. I was wondering if he... because I read the light novel. Yeah, it's just like, all right, I'm gonna go and pick herb. And I was like, I'm back. I brought food, and I don't know if the manga shows it, but it's just like, yeah, here's like 15 more bodies of other monsters just laying around him. Does the manga get to the first time that he makes Fel Japanese food? Or is that in book 2?
Yeah, because I forget exactly when that cutoff is. It cuts off right at the end of him doing the herb quest.
Okay, so I think that's before it. Yeah. So we won't talk about it. But when they finally figure out what feeding them Japanese food does, and Fel goes hunting, the bodies start to stack up.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the trick is when he feeds people food, it gives them a slight buff because of his cooking. It's not a skill, but he knows how to cook and uses ingredients from Japan. But I believe the trick is when he cooks everything made from ingredients from Japan. Because for the most part, he's been like, I made the soup. Throw in some herbs from here. He got some meat from the adventurers and things like that. Or meat from monsters that Fel killed. It kind of gives you a buff, but not much of one.
Yeah, but if he used some pepper. Right. Or he used some like cooking oil from Japan, but that was it. It's like, it's not really that much.
Right. Everybody's just stats a couple points, but it's nothing. If you're weak or a low level like the humans, it's noticeable, but Fel it's not that big of a deal for him. But when he uses only ingredients from his cooking market or from the online market, it's like, oh, you just doubled everything.
Yeah.
I am gonna go on a killing rampage.
Yeah. So when he first does this for Fel, because he's like, all right, I'm going to just make a bunch of Japanese food because you've been asking about it. It's like at the end of the night, Mudoka's like, all right, well, I'm going to bed. And Fel is like, I'm so excited. I'm going to go on a hunt for a bit. And Mudoka's like, okay, all right, good night. And falls asleep. Comes back. The entire field around him is just covered in bodies. And Fel is just jumping around like he's just had 6 cups of coffee. He's like, I'm so excited. Oh, my goodness. I was able to hunt so much. I'm so happy. I'm cooking stuff.
Bodies everywhere of all different monsters.
Yes.
And the one thing is, Makoto is so weak, relatively, compared to all these monsters. Fel has to put a little bubble around him to protect him. So, like, he's off destroying everything, and he's just sitting there cooking or doing other things, and it's like, there's just dead bodies everywhere. It's like, okay. Because he's been cooking, like, Japanese-style food.
Yeah.
But with ingredients from this world. So you have, like, fried chicken of some kind of chicken kind of thing.
Some kind of bird.
Yeah, some kind of bird, but not a chicken. So it's
and again, because he's using spices and oils and things like that from the modern world, like, the quality of cooking is just better because those ingredients just work.
Exactly.
And the spices are rich and flavorful. They haven't been sitting on a ship for the 9-month sea travel like they were in medieval times.
Exactly. The one thing that I wish the first volume did have is there's another companion that comes up.
Yes.
The name is Sui.
Yes, Sui is great.
Sui is a slime. And I believe they showed up in volume 2. And it's just what to do with all your trash.
Yes, and then Sui gets a personality. And Sui is so much fun.
Because Fel is ancient, knows everything, is so powerful. It's like, okay, I have a personality of I want to eat, and I am unstoppable. Yes. And Sui starts as a level 1 slime, and is pretty much a baby.
To give you a glimpse into volume 2 of the manga and the rest of book 1 of the light novel, Sui then also becomes unstoppable.
Yes.
Quite quickly.
Because
not entirely unstoppable, but
very close.
Very powerful, very fast.
Not Fel level, but definitely can hold their own against many, many creatures.
Yes.
Because she is pretty much the trash can of... I don't know if it's... Yeah, they're pretty much a trash can of everything that they cook. So it's like, here, eat the leftovers, clean these pans. Like, so it's just constantly eating everything from what's been cooked and everything from the other world. It's just, okay, yeah.
And another thing that's really cute about it is, like, Makoto, like, makes food for Sui, too, and then also has them clean the pans. And has to remind Sui, like, don't eat the pans, just clean them.
Yeah, there was a lot of, don't eat that, and then...
No.
Yep.
Now I know what to do with all this cardboard.
Yeah. And it's just funny when he goes to the Adventurers Guild. It's like, oh, I have a few things to have butchered, and it's just like, I pull out this, like, A-rank monster.
Black cobra that, like, spits acid and can knock down a building and eat smaller wyverns that just happen to live near it.
And one of the other funny things is, like, a lot of series, when there's monsters like orcs that are more humanoid, like what you see in Delicious in Dungeon, people aren't so keen on eating things that look like people. And one of the things is, apparently they taste like pork, I believe. Yeah. Because he does cut them. Well, he doesn't butcher it. Makoto doesn't butcher anything, but the guild does. And it's like, oh, this actually tastes good.
Yeah. There's been that was not such a shock to me, because there's been a few books that I've been reading recently where it's like, the most delicious thing is orc. Yeah. It's like, but they look like people. Yes, but they're really delicious.
Once you get past that, they're quite delicious.
Yeah. How's the art? How would you say?
The art is good. There's a style choice to it. So it's very much, I wouldn't say it's not clean, because it is, but it has a much more sketchy feel. Okay. So it's very expressive, it's very detailed, it's very dynamic. But if you're not into characters that are more, like, sketchily drawn, like, not clean lines, but have a much more contour to them, this may bug you. but it's still really good. All the characters are really expressive. They do a lot of things with shading and different perspectives, and Fell looks amazing. You could see the wolf in this monster, and you see how everyone reacts. But it's not very different. It is different. It still has the typical feel, but it is more of a sketch style, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I'm just flipping through some of it right now. Like, I can see what you mean by that, where I would say it's a little bit less, like, sketchy in terms of, like, the line work. Like, the line work is, like, there isn't a sketchiness to it, but there's more of the characters are not always super consistent.
Yeah.
They stretch and wiggle more than you would think for, like, a really clean manga. Like, it makes them expressive, but, like, even when they're not being expressive, like, they feel more stretchy, animated type than them trying to make it very consistent panel to panel.
Right. Yep.
Because I think of something like Isak, which is that really realistic style, but has, like, sketch lines on the faces and the designs. Like, this doesn't have that. This is very clean lines on it. And Isak's obviously trying to be really realistic.
Yeah, it's not a realistic style, per se.
Not at all.
It's very much more on the anime kind of style. It's more, though, that the faces, the general feel of it is not rushed, but more of quick. This is done to move the story along. There's a lot of time spent on the food. So the food looks amazing.
Yeah.
But the characters, as you said, not so much inconsistent, but they're very simple sometimes. Like, you have the general, you know who this character is. And there's actually very few repeating human characters. Fell and Makoto are, for the most part, the only two characters in the first volume who you see consistently throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of simple faces sometimes, but they're done to be expressive or to, like, hey, I don't believe you, or what are you saying? Kind of odd faces.
Yeah.
And they try to express Fell's feelings through their face, which for a wolf is kind of, you have to be a little more on the cartoony side. But it comes across.
Yeah.
But you can tell they spent a lot of time to make the food look really, which is kind of the point of this story. The food looks really, really realistic.
Yeah.
And the characters get their point across. But if you want a really hyper-realistic kind of art, this is not where you're going to get it.
And the other thing that we sort of talked about on and off recently that, like, I was thinking of, like, okay, so, like, if we're talking about this not super realistic, Nagatoro, Don't Mess With Me, Nagatoro-san, that is one where the characters are really expressive and get very silly, but when you see the character not in that silly mode, they are fully detailed as normal as everything else. And, like, from what I'm seeing in this, like, there's a lot of, the more background it gets, the more sketchbook style it does become. The more where it feels like only when it's really important is it going to be detailed. And the rest of the time, it's going to be this more feeling vibes type of art. Oh, like, this character is in shot and is saying something, so their face is going to be there. And then in the next frame, they're going to be sitting sort of towards the back, and, like, their face is gone. They just don't have a face. But, like, they're there, their arm, like, their clothes are there, their self is there. You don't get what you think of with Naruto or other, like, really detailed ones where there's this, even in the background, all the pieces are put into place. It's like, no, it's just the background. They just sort of got the vibes in and just left it at that.
Yeah. This is not a serious story for the most part. So having more goofier art kind of makes sense, because this is, for the most part, a goofy story. It's about a guy who feeds a giant wolf and has an online supermarket in his head.
Yeah.
And then it gets weirder as soon as the gods show up.
Yeah, which, again, we haven't gotten to. All the weirdest things we've talked about, we haven't even gotten to, and it's already plenty weird. It is a lot of fun. Yep. The characters are interesting and entertaining, and as far as I've read, it sounds like you've read a lot farther than me. I've only read the first novel, first light novel. Their interaction continues to be good and interesting.
Yes.
And it's a fun little story. It's entertaining. It's definitely worth your time.
And this is definitely a feel good. This is just kind of a fun little fantasy kind of slice of life story where the character just travels around cooking things. Not for any reason but to feed himself and his friends.
Yeah.
And it gets, I wouldn't say weird, but it gets, there's more characters that show up that are more involved. There's more companions. They learn more about the world. So it's one of those, this is a slow burn kind of story. The only thing I'm not sure, because I've only read the first 5 volumes, so I might get more into it. I don't know where it's going. I know he's just trying to, for the most part, for the first few volumes, he's just trying to get away from that bad city that he started in.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just him surviving with his companions and, for the most part, trying to get to the ocean. Because, like, oh, I want to go see the ocean. So that's the goal for a while. Just get to the ocean and everything that happens to get there.
Yep.
But I don't know where it's going to go after that. Oh, if I read a little more, I probably will know. But
well, yes.
In the beginning, it's kind of just, we're just going.
Yeah, there's not a lot of direction to the story.
Right.
I mean, there isn't that I'm going to get away from here. I'm going to go to there. But there's no serious, consistent plot where they're working towards a goal. These things are happening in the background that are going to inhibit these plans. It's just like, we're going to go that way. Okay. When we went that way, we ran into this thing. Okay. We dealt with that thing. Okay. It's very much they'll bring up what's going to happen next, and that thing will then happen, and then you'll just keep going.
Yeah.
There is not that overarching plot in the novel either. But it's fun.
But it's just a fun story to read about this character and his companions. Is okay. And if that's all you want, then this story's perfect. But if you want anything deep, complicated, there's probably other ones to read. Other isekais where they have crazy worlds, crazy battles. For the most part, that's not here. This is a fairly benign world from what I've read so far. There's no demon lords or things like that trying to take over. There's no crazy battles that the main characters get into. Fel just destroys everything anyways.
Yes. The characters don't get involved. That probably exists, but you won't really see it.
Exactly.
Something shows up, Fel bites it in half.
Yeah.
Moving on.
And as the story goes on, you learn more and things like that. But in the beginning, it's very slow. We're just trying to go through this world, learn about Adventurers Guild, Merchants Guild. How can I survive here with my absurd skill? And go from there.
And what can I cook for Fel today?
Yeah. If you love seeing pictures of cooking or all kinds of recipes, this has it in spades.
Yep.
They just do more and more as the story goes on.
If that is a thing that I think you're really interested in, I would recommend the manga over the novels. Mm-hmm. The novels is certainly there, but there are other food stories that I would say do that better than this. This is more of, if you're going to go for the novel, it's obviously still a major part of the story, but it's more of the interaction of Fel and Sui and Makoto and the food rather than gorgeous food pictures and all that stuff is really what you want, or like talking about the food is really what you want. I would say the novel's probably not the best that I've read. There have been others that have been better, but it's still really good and it's fun and it's entertaining. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like the manga is more that.
Yeah, the only other manga I've read that talks more about food than this one is probably, well, actually two, Toriko, but that's kind of a made-up food world. Or there's Food Wars, which is pretty much all about food and fan service.
Yeah, that's, I would say, is also different.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
But that also is, that has tons of food, talks about food all the time. So does this one.
Yep.
But there's no fan service in this one. Food Wars is full of fan service. This is just isekai food.
They talk a lot about food.
Yeah.
I would just say, like, when I think of, like, food porn series that isn't fan service, I think of Delicious and Dungeon.
Yep, that's
and
another
it sounds
one.
like the manga here is closer to that, whereas the novel isn't quite as constant in talking about the food. Yeah, he's always cooking something. Yeah, he's always making something new. I just feel like there's a little bit less of it. But maybe that's just me, and I was expecting it to be even more so than that because it is still a Japanese story. And I was like, oh yeah, well, they're always going to talk about food for like 2/3 of every chapter because that's what every isekai ends up being about.
Yeah.
So I might be selling it short as well.
And then, so if you like the light novel, like the manga, the anime is also really good. Mm-hmm. I believe it goes through maybe book 2, the light novel. It goes a ways. It's definitely well past volume 1 of the manga. I think it's a few books in where it stops, and that's really good. The intro is fun and exciting, and it very much gets the feel of the story of just a nice world. Well, nice is relative, but a decent world with food and comedy, and all the characters feed off each other really well. And any light novel, manga, anime, you can't go wrong with either of those. Any of those.
Yeah.
They're all good.
Yeah.
The story's good. Definitely check it out.
All right. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you all very much for listening to another episode of the Mudai Manga Book Club podcast. If you'd like to follow us outside of the show, you can find us on Blue Sky at Mudai Manga Book Club or YouTube at Mudai Manga Book Club. Makes it nice and simple. In addition, if you wouldn't mind sharing the episode, or if you're on YouTube, giving us a like and a subscribe, or maybe even a comment, just to give us a sense of whether or not you're enjoying it. If you want to have any questions, comments, or other feedback for us, we would love to see it in the YouTube comments. If you're not on YouTube and you'd like to send us your questions, comments, rants, or other random food things that you'd like to talk to us about, you can also email us at mudaimangabookclub@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. Again, nice and simple. It's all the same everywhere. For now. Yeah. So, Louis, do you have any other final recommendations for us for this week?
Yeah, so one thing that I've been playing is a game called Atelier Ryza. It's not a new game. It came out a number of years ago. You get it on the Switch, PlayStation 4, I think, or PC, like on Steam. It's sold out, I think, most places except Steam, so that's why I've been playing it on my Steam Deck. It's a Atelier game, so it's about alchemy, kind of crafting and things like that, like the other Atelier series. This one just follows a different character, and it's fairly, as the story we were talking about today, it's a fairly fun, happy world. Nothing crazy is going on for the most part, and you just go around collecting things, making stuff, doing alchemy. There's a story. The first one has some, because of its age, a little UI and things that could have been done a little better, just to make it a little more user-friendly. But it's an interesting story, and it's cool how you can craft. There's a huge crafting system in it of you just go and get all these ingredients, and you just put them in this giant grid-like system to say, okay, I want to make like a shovel or like a hammer, and you have to get wood and stones and things like that. It's not like Minecraft where you can just throw whatever in. There's very unique things that you have to go and hunt. Like, you have to go get wood from certain trees, you have to go get bugs for certain honeys and things like that. So you're going around this world collecting all this stuff, then you bring it all together, and it's a cool crafting system, and it kind of builds on it as you go, and you can definitely fine-tune things to give them better stats. So there's a lot to build on, but it's just a fun little go collect things, walk around in the world kind of game. That was fun.
Okay.
I believe there's 3.
There are 3 of the Atelier Ryza.
Yes.
And 3 came out, I think,
recently,
a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
23, 24.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 2023.
They're kind of hard to find, not on PC, so I don't know if they sell, because the Atelier series has a bunch of different games and a bunch of different series. None of them are connected. Like Atelier Ryza, it's its own little story, and there's a few other Atelier that are kind of their own little one-off stories, but they're all set in like you're doing alchemy kind of feel.
I haven't played any of them, but I have heard a lot about them, and it's generally each set of games, usually it's 3, will be following a specific atelier or like a certain area of the world, and then the next one will jump to a different section. So Atelier Ryza is 1, 2, and 3 are all about this about Ryza.
Yeah.
Other ones, it won't always be the same main character, but it will be 2 or 3 games in a row that'll be related, and then they'll jump to another section. And Ryza 3 is the 24th of the Atelier games, so there's a lot.
Yeah, and there is a combat system. It's very much a turn-based one. So, and then each Atelier game is slightly different. They're not all exactly the same with different characters. So it's kind of like your Final Fantasy, where every Final Fantasy is a Final Fantasy. You kind of get that feel for Final Fantasy. Yeah. But it's different enough where it's not just a carbon copy from one to another with just another number stuck in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I've been doing. Or something I've been recommend checking out. It's fun.
Cool.
What about you?
I brought it up earlier with Arcen Games, which is spelled Arcen. It's a one-person dev studio, although he usually has one or two other people he works with really closely who do a lot of his music, who recently, like I said, recently released Heart of the Machine. But if you haven't played any of his things, I would highly recommend AI War 1 or 2, depending on which one is more interesting to you. Like I said, this is a game set in space where humanity accidentally created AI. The AI completely wrecked them, took over the galaxy that humans were in, basically destroyed everything, and got like 97% of the way to exterminating humanity, and then got distracted and started fighting exogalactic threats. And so you, as humanity, starting out on like one planet in this generated galaxy, have to rebuild and destroy the AI. But the only reason that you could beat the AI is the AI is distracted. If the AI was ever, you get powerful enough, the AI decides you're a threat, it will turn around and evaporate you. So the entire game plays as this real-time strategy game with a lot of tower defense elements of you having to like scout into AI-controlled territory and pick the minimum number of targets you need to hit in order to be able to take out the AI core.
Weird. Okay.
You start out like taking all the planets around you to like build up some manufacturing, but then you'll start setting up your forces to like skip through 3 or 4 jumps to take this planet because that'll give you a research boost for the ships that you have, or it has a AI controlled shield generator that you have to take out. And so in a system of like 100 planets that you'll end up playing across, you might only end up taking 30. And that's still a very long, grueling, conquest-heavy game, because you're trying to find their core and you're trying to take them out. And the AI is... the first one is quite old. It was released in like 2011, but the AI does not work like a human player. It is an AI, and it has basically infinite resources. Not exactly, but you're always trying to not be a big problem to them. Where it will throw something at you, it didn't really work, but it's okay because it sort of kept you back, and it has other things to deal with. AI War 2 released about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's basically a new version. AI War 1 is tower defense and fleet management and really dense simulation for like building up bases and things like that. AI War 2 swaps some of that to be more of carrier ships that will rebuild their own fleets. And so you'll equip those carriers with different internal fleets and then use those to sort of take over planets. It works in a very similar way, but it's a distinctly different game sequel where it's not just they updated it 10 years later. They redesigned a lot of the systems to work in a different way. AI War Fleet Command, the original, was one of the first indie games to be on Steam ever. It was, I'm sorry, not 2011, 2009.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was released. It was one of the first and only indie games released on Steam. And both games are reasonably priced. The original is $10. The sequel is $20. The music's amazing. There are a bunch of add-on contents that you can get for it, but you do not need them. The game is fun. It's going to take you a lot of time to get involved. And if you want something challenging, the max difficulty is literally designed to be unbeatable. And there's people on it who try to figure out how to beat it, and then the developer goes and updates the AI so that it's again impossible. And they've been going back and forth over and over again. But it's a game that will reward you for strategy and figuring out the way to take what you have and ratcheting it up for everything that it's worth in each moment of what you're doing.
That's cool. I'll check it out.
As for that, that's going to be the end of the episode. Tune in next week where we're going to look at Peddler in Another World. I can go back to my world whenever I want. Light novel, volume 1. Because merchants and random fantasy isekai is still like 35% of all of the light novels that are released these days. So, hey, we'll do another one.
Yep. Sounds good.
Until next time, have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Peace. So for our small topic today, we're going to be talking about if you're thank you
Oh, teach me, Professor.
I didn't even have to get my MBA. I don't know why I would need an MBA to become a professor. Professor. To become a professor.
Professor,
I don't know why I would. I don't know why I needed an MBA to become a professor, because I need a PhD instead.
Yes.
Peace. Kendrick Lamar.
Of course.
Oh, sorry. Also SZA.